The cops came to my house because my neighbor called 911 demanding they drag my pregnant wife off our own porch. 8 months along, swollen ankles, DHS badge in her hand, and this woman Darla Whittam, our HOA president, was pointing at her like she was trespassing. The officers took one look at Maya's ID, nodded, and walked away. Darla stood there, twitching clipboard, shaking in her fist. That's when I knew I wasn't just dealing with a petty neighbor. I was dealing with someone drunk on power, and she'd picked the wrong family. My name's Nate Ellison. I don't yell. I don't throw punches. I audit. That's my job, federal cybersecurity auditor. I spend my days catching vulnerabilities in systems people swear are bulletproof. And if there's one thing I know, it's that bullies leave trails. Darla didn't know it yet, but I was already tracking hers. That porch swing she hated. My grandfather built it. Every bolt, every chain. It's where Maya can finally breathe, where her sciatica eases enough for her to nap. But Darla came storming down the sidewalk quoting HOA bylaws like scripture saying non-residents can't loiter. Non-resident. My wife's name is literally on the deed. She waved that clipboard like a weapon, and when I didn't back down, she called the cops. I thought maybe that humiliation would cool her off. Instead, the next morning, a violation notice was taped to our door. Second warning. There hadn't even been a first. That's how she worked: manufacture the problem, then punish you for it. I showed up at the community center during one of their so-called informal sessions. Darla was there, flanked by board members and her little fan club. She said it was closed, but the bylaws said otherwise. I sat down in the back and listened. She didn't just make bad calls, she made policy out of pettiness. I spotted neighbors who'd been hit before Mrs. Carter fined for her arthritis, keeping her from trimming hedges. The Chongs written up for parking at a crooked angle. Darla wasn't enforcing standards, she was weaponizing them. When she stormed out, I caught the treasurer, Julian Reyes. He looked uneasy, like a man carrying secrets he couldn't unload. Later, he admitted quietly that she'd pushed a fine through with no vote. That's when I knew this wasn't just HOA politics. This was dictatorship with a clipboard. It escalated fast. More warnings slapped onto our porch swing. Fines threatened $100 a day. They weren't trying to enforce anything. They were trying to drown us in paperwork to make us so uncomfortable we'd either obey or leave. But here's the thing: I read audit logs for a living, and I'd already found her weak point, the HOA surveillance system. She'd installed cameras around the neighborhood claiming safety. What I found were edits, clean surgical cuts in footage, neighbors' driveways spliced, kids playing basketball relabeled as loitering. When I pulled our clip from the day of the police call, the entire scene had been scrubbed. According to the record, Maya never even stepped onto the porch. But the system had backups, and those backups don't lie. I sat in the library, pulled the raw feed, and watched as Maya showed her DHS badge to the cops, as their expressions softened as they turned away from Darla. Proof she tried to erase. Proof she couldn't. I saved it, secured it, and walked home with my pulse steady. But that night, staring at the mounting notices, I cracked. My wife asleep inside her hand on her belly, me sitting alone on the porch swing thinking, what if we just left? What if it isn't worth it? I've got a baby on the way. Do I really want our kid born into a war zone with a woman like Darla running the neighborhood? That thought ate at me. For a minute I almost gave in. But Maya woke, stepped out barefoot, sat beside me. She looked exhausted, but she said, if we leave, she wins. And she won't stop. Not with us, not with anyone. That's when it hit me. I wasn't fighting for a porch swing. I was fighting for the right to exist in peace, not just for us, but for every neighbor she'd trampled. The next day, Julian gave me something that changed everything. A flash drive. On it, board expenses, vendor logs, and a reimbursement check. $5,000. Signed to herself. No vote, no receipts. Fraud plain and simple. And the so-called contractor she'd been funneling HOA money to registered to her own son. Surveillance cameras, shell companies, forged invoices. This wasn't pettiness anymore. It was embezzlement. I spent nights compiling it all: video evidence, forged timestamps, financial trails. I printed 25 packets, one for every household. Slid them under doormats, clipped them to mailboxes. No hiding. I wanted Darla to see me doing it. By noon, the neighborhood was buzzing. Mrs. Carter clutched her packet with trembling hands, whispering, "She fined me for porch cushions. She lied to us all this time. Eyes that used to look at me with pity now looked at me with fire." I filed a formal complaint with the city's ethics committee. I also requested a 10-minute presentation slot at the next HOA meeting. 10 minutes to flip the script. 10 minutes to show everyone what she really was. The clubhouse was packed that night. More faces than I'd ever seen at a board meeting. Darla stood at the front, pearls around her neck like armor clipboard tight in her grip. She tried to move past my name on the sign-in sheet, but Julian cleared his throat. Peer bylaws, 10 minutes. The room shifted. The crowd wasn't on her side anymore. I plugged in my drive. Slide 1 lit up the wall. Systematic misuse of authority and HOA funds. I walked them through every piece. Surveillance logs, timestamp discrepancies, vendor invoices traced to her son, Julian's notarized affidavit. And then the final slide, Maya sitting peacefully on our porch, the image Darla had tried to erase. For 10 seconds, silence. You could hear the projector hum. Then whispers. "She fined me for that too. She said my daughter's sidewalk chalk was graffiti." Darla snapped. She accused me of fabricating, of hacking. I let her finish, then said calm, but loud enough for everyone, "I am a federal cybersecurity auditor. I deal in forensics every day. This isn't conjecture. This is chain of custody evidence." Julian rose from his chair. "As treasurer, I confirm none of these expenditures were approved. The documents match what I pulled from the board system under my own credentials." That broke her. She froze, eyes wide, turning on him. "You gave him board data." He didn't flinch. "I verified misuse of funds. That's my duty." The room erupted. Residents shouting, some clapping, phones recording. Darla tried to regain control, barking about smear campaigns, but nobody was listening. They were staring at the slide behind me, a canceled check made out to herself. No work order, no vote, just theft. Julian made the motion suspend her authority immediately pending investigation. The board voted. 1 by 1, hands raised. 5 for removal, none against. Darla's hand hovered trembling, then dropped. That was it. Power gone. She didn't scream. She didn't fight. She just stood, face-pale, pearls rattling against her collar, and walked out. The door shut behind her, and for the first time in months the room exhaled. I packed up my laptop. Didn't linger. Didn't gloat. Neighbors pressed my hand, whispered thanks, but I wasn't there for applause. I was there to make sure my wife could sit on her own porch without being treated like a criminal. And as I walked out into the cool night, one thought kept circling in my head. Power built on intimidation always looks solid until someone finally turns on the lights.